I don't want to know.
What?
That I'm going to be killed.
Yeah, you wake up in the car and something like that and say, why didn't you? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, let's stop now.
All right. Well, just so you all know, we are online. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to take another look at the first 12 verses of Exodus 3. Even though I had intended to do the whole chapter on Sunday, I figured four points and 12 verses, that was enough. So we'll do the rest of the next half of the chapter this coming Sunday. But would somebody open in prayer, and then I will direct your attention to the study questions that I put in the chairs all here for you, and we'll chat away for a little bit.
Father, thank you for bringing us together for another evening of study of your word. Please help us all to be open hearts and open minds and come away with what you propose for us. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right, what did you learn on Sunday? Specifically from the sermon. You probably, hopefully, learned a lot throughout the day, a lot of other different contexts and things, but we're talking about the sermon. What did you learn?
I loved the last thing you said, almost, I think.
Amen?
And it was where you said what our life was supposed to be.
Okay.
That our life was supposed to be lived. The journey of the life was on the stage.
That paragraph is the next to last paragraph on the first page of your discussion right here. There's a paragraph and then there's one line. It's the paragraph above the one line on the page. So go ahead and read that, Tammy, since you're commenting on it.
The point of your life journey as one chosen by God is to be a stage on which God's presence, presents the truth about himself to the world. I've always, all my life, struggled with what is my purpose. My brother went to Argentina for 11 years to be a missionary. You know, I'm a nanny. But that's the purpose of our life right there. 62 and 64 years old, and I finally. Okay.
I was 65 before I wrote it. So let's talk about that. What do you think about that? The point of your life journey as one chosen by God is to be a stage on which God presents the truth about himself to the world. How do you feel about that?
Well, if you have any thoughts about what people think, he's telling you you're supposed to be a stage for what people think.
Okay? And how does that make you feel?
Can I have a week off?
It's a lot of pressure.
That's how it makes me feel. Help! If my life is supposed to be a stage on which God presents himself through me to the world, in other words, he uses the relationship that he has with me and the way in which I live in that relationship and the way in which he lives through me in that relationship is not primarily about what it does for me, but primarily about how other people see Jesus and see this relationship through me. That's way beyond me. That's too much. That's not something I say, oh yeah, well, come on, y'all take a good look. Paul would say it this way. He said, follow me as I follow Christ. And then he'll turn around in another letter and say, but the ministry to which we're calling is too much for us. You know, to realize that this is a privilege, but it is also a responsibility that is wholly the work of the Holy Spirit. You cannot do this on your own. And this is exactly the right word. Because what happens if you cry out to God for help?
He's there.
God helps. God helps. Scripture says he's a very present help in time of trouble. So what else? What else do you think about this idea that the point of our life is to be a stage on which God presents the truth about himself to the world?
Well, I love the point, the thing is, as a chosen one,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it wasn't an accident.
Mm-hmm.
You were specifically called or appointed, whether it's because of the way you'll walk it out or those stumbles that you'll make walking it out or whatever. He knew you before time and he chose you to do it.
Okay, let's pursue that a little bit. What you just said. When does God choose us? What?
Before the foundation.
So in eternity. So this is going to be eternity past. And this is going to be eternity future. I don't know why in my mind past is always to the left and future is always to the right. But if you ever watch me when I'm preaching, good is always to the right, bad is always to the left. I don't know why. All right? So God chooses us before the foundation of the world. When did you start being chosen?
In the beginning?
In the beginning.
Beginning of time to us,
Mhm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
When we started time.
Right. And so when does God finally catch up with your experience of being chosen?
In the beginning.
Of what?
Time.
Okay.
Before our
All right. Well, here's what I'm trying to get at. We live in this little space right here. Okay? I remember a poem somebody gave me not too long ago about this is the dash. Okay? All right, so here's, see if I can get it right here, 6/27/52 to 9/6/25. And his birthday, the day she went to heaven. Now, on a tombstone, the day she's born, the day she died, this is the dash. And our life is encompassed in the dash. Okay? Now, this is when we experience what it means to be chosen within the confines of limits of our life, right? And it's in the dash that we're going to do the positive things and the negative things, and the positive things and the negative things, and sometimes we're going to go up, and sometimes we're going to go down, sometimes we're going to go in circles, sometimes we're going to be like this, right? Life is going to look like that, right? When does God catch up to your dash? Here. So let's just say, somebody's calling me at this hour. Let's just say this one is really bad. Let's just say you really messed up. When does God know this is going to happen? Right there. And when does he choose you? Right there. So what impact does this have on this?
None.
None. What impact does this have on God loving you? None. What impact does this have on God keeping his promises to you? What impact does this God have on God using your life as a stage in which he presents the truth about himself to the world. So if you're shaking your head saying, my answer is probably none, then how many of us look at these moments in our dash and think that, God's plan clearly has been completely messed up?
More often than not.
Huh? More often than not, we do that. More often than not, we think that this has a bigger impact than God does. Because God chose us from eternity knowing that this was going to happen. And not only that, he knows that's not going to be the only one. And he still chooses us. And he still uses this time in between the dash to use us as a stage in which he presents truth about himself to the world. In the dash, he does things like forgive. He does things like provide. He does things like love. He does things like guide. He does things like exalt. He does things like what? Tell me some more. What else does he do? He does things like discipline and rebuke and correct and teach. What else does he do? He leads. What else?
I guess instruction would be under teaching, but
Okay, what else?
Gives us an example.
All right, let's make that under this. He announces.
Gets to know us. We didn't get to know him, I should say.
All right, he introduces.
communicates.
He communicates.
Judges.
Yep. He judges. He relates. Yep.
Inspires.
He inspires. What else? He does all of this and more in the course of your dash, knowing full well that in the grand scheme of things, there's probably going to be more red screw-ups than there are green victories.
We don't deserve it.
And yet, he still does it. See, and the point of pointing this out is that not only can you trust a God who can make a decision to benefit this life, to bless it, to anoint it, to call it, to instruct it, to conform it to himself. Not only can you trust a God who can do this, given that he knows what it's going to be like here, you can love the God who knows that. And that's the whole point. The whole point of God loving you in the life that you live, with all of its human frailty, is so other people will have the opportunity to see the way in which he loves you and the way in which you love him back, and see that as an invitation to know him and be loved by him as well. You don't have to be perfect.
You mean we're good enough?
No,
Well, he is.
he is. See that, and that's the difference, folks. That's the difference between what you hear from me on a regular basis and what the majority of my colleagues are telling people. The majority of my colleagues are telling people you're good enough. And God acknowledges that. Okay? And the reality is, no. If you look at just the pure, honest content of our life in the dash, compared to who God is and what he calls for us, good enough is not the word we want to use. Now, we can use that in some other contexts, but compared to God, no, it's not about being good enough. It's not that we're good enough. It's that God, who is good, is enough. And we are his. And he not only are we his, but he chooses us to be his. And he does it in spite of what he already knows about us. His expectation of us is that we're going to be chosen. But that's going to lead us to this. That's his expectation. I'm going to choose them, and they're going to wind up here.
So has he got a big old dartboard up there with everybody's name on it? Just throws darts
You
at
know
it?
that he does it. Why do you ask questions like that?
How does he pick one over another?
Who gets to be chosen?
Right. Here's the word, Steve. It's the same one we've used and talked about many, many, many times.
Yeah, well, I got short memory. So,
This is completely related to who God is. He doesn't have to choose any, but he chooses some. Because to any, the whole population does not deserve to be chosen. That he chooses any is a miracle. And I know that some of you all continue to wrestle with that, and that's okay. But here's what I don't want you to do. I don't want you to think that because somebody is still resisting this journey, that makes them hopeless and makes your position unfortunate. My brother-in-law is convinced he's not one of the chosen. I'm convinced he's not God, so he doesn't know. And I'm convinced that he grew up in a missionary home, he's been baptized, he's had a lot of difficulty in his life, that he has not seen how God has worked. Some of the rest of us see it more clearly than he does. So he's convinced that he can't be chosen because his life sucks. From his own choices and the choices of others and all the rest of that, and God hasn't just made it bed of roses, so he must not be a chosen one. And I'm like, right? When you get to be God, you can tell us this. Until then, as long as you have life and breath, you don't know the answer to that yet. And we all holding out that pretty soon you'll turn the light switch on. And quit denying what God's telling you. And figure that out. But don't get into that place of thinking that because the reality is we already know not everybody gets to heaven. We already know that. We already know that all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. We already know that. We know that if anyone doesn't fall short of the glory of God, which we all do, so that we're all going to, but if anybody doesn't suffer the right punishment of that they instead of forgiveness, that is purely mercy and grace. That's not about them, it's about God. Okay? And that God chooses anyone, that mercy and that grace is worthy of praise. And listen, if he can choose any of us, anybody should have hope. Okay? Because it ain't over. Once it starts, it ain't over till the dash ends. As long as the dash is continuing, there's hope. Okay? And I can appreciate, because most of my life I grew up with the idea. It's much easier to think of God making this choice based on the quality of the dash. It's much, much easier to think that God chooses us because he knows we're going to choose him. Because he knows that somewhere along the line we're going to get it right. We're going to do something that makes his choice reasonable. Okay?
I think that's trying to be God then.
Exactly right. And if God has to rely on someone other than himself, some other will other than his, to justify his choice, guess what God isn't? He's not God anymore. He's just a weak little influence waiting for us to get it right so he can come along and have some head and tell us, I've waited a long time for you, thank you for finally figuring this out. I'm glad you saved yourself. Okay? All right. Keep wrestling with that. I'll keep trying to shed light on it for you. See where this goes when you think about God? If you think about God, if you sit down and say, listen, I want to think about God the way God wants me. This is why he was going to kill Moses on the way, because Moses wasn't thinking about God the way he should have been thinking about God. I mean, that's the only time anybody's ever in trouble, right? But if you stop and you take the opportunity to say, I want to think about God the way God thinks about God, I guarantee you, he is going to lift your thinking beyond the plane of the ordinary. Because he's not ordinary. God is the definition of extraordinary.
So we should be praying, God, change my thinking about you to what?
So here, I think the best example for that is actually coming up later in Exodus. Moses is up on the mountain, on Mount Sinai. Okay, God's given him the 2 tablets. He's gone down the mountain. He's dropped them in his rage. He's gone back up. The Lord tells him, you've got to make your own stone tablets this time. I'll write on it, but you got to make them. So he makes them. And he's up there, and he says, in that second time that he's up on the mountain, he says, God, I want to see you in your glory. Okay? And I like to think about it in my own little paraphrase. That's when God put him between a rock and a hard place. He hides him in the cleft of the rock, hides him with his hands, and passes by, announcing his name and his character. And Moses is just able to see him in passing. That's all Moses can stand. And just that little glimpse of glory changes as Moses' face, and people can't even look at him. You have to wear a veil. Okay, in which that glory, of course, fades over time. We find out with the Hebrews. But Moses is simply before God and says, they just had a long discussion. Because God has said, you know what, I'm so sick of dealing with Israel, I'm going to wipe them all out, and Moses, I'm going to start with you. And Moses says, oh, please don't do that. Then the world would think wrongly about you. They would think that you are merciful. They will think that you brought your people out here just to destroy them because they messed up what the Egyptians had. And he said, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Which, of course, God was always not going to do that. He wanted Moses to bring Moses into this whole discussion. But at the end of that discussion, Moses says, here's what I want more than anything else. I just want to see you in your glory. And I think that is the prayer that ought to arise from our hearts regularly. God, I just want to see you in your glory. And I'll tell you right now, I'm struggling with that. To be very honest with you, as transparent as I can. Today was a really hard day. I'm really struggling with that because I feel like I'm in a dark room. I keep describing it, a dark room that has walls and doors, but it is so dark, I'm in no room, I have no idea what way to turn. And I find myself sitting in my chair, or usually wherever this happens to hit, and I just say, God, I cannot see a single thing here, so just show me you. I can't see a thing, I have no idea what to turn, where to turn, I don't know what to do next, I don't know what's the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do, I just don't know, so just show me you. And that's all I can do. And I think there are those occasions when Moses is there, and the thing that he asks for is, God, just show me you. And God does. And it's life-changing. I don't know. Maybe sometimes we just get the idea that God is in heaven and does as he pleases, and we're here on earth and we're just trying to figure out what pleases him so we can do it, and the two shall never meet until heaven. And it's like, Jesus would go up and spend nights in the presence of his Father. You know, I mean, that was normal. Why is it normal for us?
It says that in the Bible?
Hmm?
That Jesus would go up into heaven?
No. He would go up on into
okay.
a solitary place or out on a mountain or no.
Yeah, okay, I'm like, I don't remember ever hearing that.
Right, so that clarification. Sometimes I do expect people to fill in the blanks. And so, but no, that's
Fill in the blanks in here.
well, I get going and I just assume everybody knows what I mean. But yeah, but he would go up on a quiet place by himself, go up on a mountain, hear that, say that, go off alone,
That
and
makes
spend
more sense.
all night praying. You know, and come back and do cool stuff the whole next day as if he slept well all night, which he rested in the presence of his Father. He was renewed by the glory of that interaction. So, and the point of your life's journey is one chosen by God to be a stage on which God presents the truth about himself to the world. And how is he going to do that? Through your living relationship of faith with him through faith in Jesus Christ.
Then you'll glow.
Then you what?
Then you'll glow. Like Moses did.
I tell ya,
People will see.
honestly, honestly, I know people. I can tell when somebody's had a really amazing worship experience with the Lord, and the Spirit's been present, and they've been. You can just tell. You can just tell the look on their face. You can just tell. So what else about Sunday? That's a lot already on the board. We covered from eternity to eternity. What else? What did you learn? What were the points in the sermon?
Identify your backside. Stop negotiating. Reframe your story. And practice holy fear.
Where are you reading?
Your 4 points.
Oh no, those are not the points. Those are the application points. Those are what you do with
Mine
the
aren't
points.
as defined as that.
Okay. Number 1. When you find yourself in the backside of the desert, what's the first thing?
Expect God to show
Expect
up.
God to show up. Do you expect God to show up in your life? Always, really?
I always expect him to show up. Do I see it? No. So often I don't.
All right.
Then I'm guilty because I don't see him and I know he's there.
Okay. So if you tell me, Tammy, how do you miss it?
I don't know, I was much better off when I was a kid doing this walk.
Mm-hmm.
I was saved at 8. I knew God was there. I didn't care about anybody else
Mm-hmm.
because I had God,
Mm-hmm.
the Holy Spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And now
Well, let's
struggle.
talk about what gets in the way. What changes between when we were a child in faith and when we grow up in faith?
I think the load.
All right, the load of what?
Life, expectations, what people expect to see you produce versus what I expect myself to produce, which is probably my worst enemy.
Okay. Do the rest of you always expect God to show up?
I don't think of
I
it
know,
that way.
he's there, but if I don't, I figure I'm not asking the right questions or looking for the right thing if I don't.
Okay.
I expect him to show up if I ask. That's the thing.
I got the mustard seed, you got more.
I know he's always there. I mean, he promised he would
yeah.
never leave us or forsake us.
Mm-hmm.
So I know he's there. So I asked, okay, what are you trying to show me? What am I supposed to learn?
Okay.
And then he generally gives me an answer if I ask him.
How soon?
Well, the new one took like 16 years.
Okay. And you and I often talk about the idea that sometimes, and I want you all to know Irene uses this analogy, not me. I did not come up with this. But Irene will talk about how sometimes God has to hit her over there with a 2x4.
And slap me upside.
Slap you upside the head with a 2x4. That's not my language.
Right now, he's flat on your face.
That
was his language.
That was my language. I did do that. But it's interesting because I think these are the two things. This is actually perfect. These are the two things that as Christians we typically fall into one of these others. We always expect him, and we're disappointed when he quote unquote doesn't show up. And we know he did, but we missed him. Okay, so there's disappointment here, and then we don't always expect him, and we're disappointed in ourselves for not expecting him. All right? But what is it that these have in common, and which is really this stuff, is the distractions and the obstructions. Do you know why I cannot see Lake Superior clearly from my house? There's trees in the way. Because Linda liked the trees better than the lake. Because I wanted them gone. And she said, I don't care about seeing the lake. I don't want anybody to see in the house. And so we got trees, and because we have trees, you can't see the lake as clearly. Folks, sometimes there are trees in our lives that keep us from seeing how God is present. The lake is always there. But very often I can't see it because of the obstructions. Sometimes the only reason I can't see the lake is because I'm busy doing other stuff. I'm doing the laundry, and I'm looking at the washer and dryer, and my back is to the window where the lake can be seen. Okay? I'm not there to look at the lake. I'm there to do life. And sometimes I do the distractions of doing life create an obstruction from what's already there. Moses is up on the mountain. He's been interacting with God for 40 days and 40 nights. I mean, the mountain there's been lightning, and there's been thunder, and there's been voices that got everybody else scared to even touch the mountain. And Moses has been right up in the middle. And in the middle of that, he says, oh, by the way, I'd like to actually see you. Like, Moses, come on, you've been up there with him for a month and a half. What do you mean you want to see him? I want to see him. I want all the distractions and all the instructions out of the way, and I want to see him clearly. And I think it is possible when we're on the backside of the desert, when we're in the middle of life and all of its experiences, God is not absent, but there are distractions and instructions that keep us from seeing him. So it's not that God has failed, folks, and it's not necessarily that we have failed. We just learned to live with these two things. And sometimes we have to say, you know what, I think I need to identify the distractions and not do them, or I need to identify the instructions and find a different position so I can see around them, or ask God to remove them. I have decided to ask God to please not blow down my trees. Because I don't have enough faith to tell him to have them blow that way. All right? But I have figured out, if I clean out some of the underbrush, I can see right past the trees to the way I want to. So sometimes it's about repositioning ourselves so we can see past the instructions, and sometimes about having them. But we should expect God to show up, because he says, I will never leave you or forsake you. Lo, I am with you to the very end of the age. And if he fails that promise even once, he's a liar. And if he's a liar, he is not God. Okay? So, on those days when you find yourself on the backside of the desert, expect God to show up. Moses could have said, bush burning, not burning up. Nope, that's too unfamiliar to me. I'm out of here. Come on, sheep. I don't know what's going on here, but this is not safe. But he doesn't. Because you see, sometimes the biggest distraction is fear, and the biggest obstruction is unbelief. I called my sister this morning. Actually, I sent her a text knowing she would call. I knew my sister that text she would call. And she did. My sister is wise beyond anything I ever imagined she would be. She's been very, very helpful. Even though I know better, my head knows better, I keep getting stuck here. I don't want to make the wrong choice, the wrong decision. Mm-hmm. And she said, what are you afraid of? That I'll make a wrong decision that people will get hurt. And she said, oh, you don't believe God.
Put it on you there, huh?
What? She said, you don't believe that your congregation belongs to Jesus, that he's their shepherd and their Savior, and that he will do right whether you're there or not, that he will be with them, and he will help them, and he will grow them, and he will keep all of his promises to them, and he will amaze them. She said, you don't believe that. You think if you're not there, then God won't do for them. She said, you're an unbeliever. I'm like, I knew I should throw you out the car. But I mean, this is what happens. This is real life. God will bring us into these places, these lows of life experience, the burden of expectations, most of which for me right now are the ones I'm putting on myself. That I should have all the answers because I'm the pastor, right? I should have all the answers, and I shouldn't shouldn't stand in front of the meat counter in IGA talking, being remote all pieces. She's just retired from being the activity director at the care centers. Yeah, she retired about 3 years ago. And she was telling me, Dale, I feel so unfettered and free. And I said, I feel exactly the same way, but from the opposite direction. I feel like I'm lost. And I think I shouldn't, because I've been walking with Jesus for a long time and teaching other people about this, and I've counseled other people about this, and all of a sudden I'm on the counseling part. I'm like, God, I'm supposed to skip this part. Listen, we need to expect on the backside of the desert that God's going to show up. And if we can't see him, then let's identify the distractions. Is it fear, or the obstructions is unbelief? Get you a good sister like mine who tells you it's both.
There are 4 of them, none of them meet that qualification.
Isn't that Satan working in your head?
That it is me working in my head, and Satan exacerbating the problem. And me not, well, part of it is, I think in a situation that many of us share when it comes to grief, we can't control grief. And that's just the nature of what it is. And so that creates a vulnerability that I am trying to sort out. What am I responsible for? What am I not?
Because you're a type A.
Yeah, please. Or is that like for, what's A stand for?
Yes.
Annoying?
No.
Abnormal? It's because I'm firstborn, and I'm supposed to be in control.
Yeah,
I'm supposed to have all the answers. I'm supposed to be the one who sets the example for everybody. Because that's my mom. She told me all those years. I don't know that's all part of it. But the reality is, the life that we have with Jesus, in which he is demonstrating to the whole world the power of his, it's in the weaknesses too. It's not just in the stuff that we get, that's easy that we get right. It's in the stuff that we struggle with.
That's what the real problem is.
And that is where the real power is. And the real power winds up being his. Okay? Sometimes we expect him to show up and then we're disappointed when he doesn't. Well, why aren't we seeing it? And sometimes we don't expect him to show up and we feel bad that we didn't expect it when he does show up. Well, let's say why we didn't see it. And exactly the power of faith is God pointing these out to us and saying, if you'll give me these, you wait and see what happens. This is our rock and our hard place, where God is willing to show us his glory. Everybody got that and wants it? What's the second one? Remember, who's who? Who is God? Let me ask the question differently. It'll be more helpful if I ask it the other way. Who is not God? Everybody who is not God, raise your hand. There you go. See? Just keep that confession right there. And therefore, the expectations that you put on yourself in the backside of the desert, you don't deserve. You don't deserve, because you cannot carry the weight of being God. Sometimes you just got to be a shepherd in exile, leading somebody else's sheep. Remember who's who. What's the third one?
Not about you.
Who's it about? What does that mean? If it's about God, what does it mean?
That scripture you'll always say, I can never remember.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you know it, you know it.
Guns always.
No, it's the one.
That's not scripture, I know what it sounds like.
Okay.
Go back to 2:14.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Word. Start me.
For the earth,
So be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord.
glory of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. God is at work in the world and in you to make himself known the way he knows himself. Right? That's what God is about. God makes himself known so some will share in his joy of being God. We're sharing his joy as I'll leave it there. There's other ways to say it. Okay? What's the fourth one?
God always wins.
Always. God always wins. Think about it for a minute. What negotiations are you in right now with God? Oh, yes, you are. You would say that you are having no discussions with God and that you are perfectly aligned with his will and everything and have no questions.
No, but.
Then, unless you can say that you are perfectly aligned with God's will and have no questions, then the very nature of figuring out the relationship is a negotiation.
Is it more to understand?
Huh?
Is it more to try to understand?
Why do you have to understand? Just do what he says. Why do you have to put the criteria or the qualifier on it? If I understand, it'll be better. And Steve, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. We all do that. But what I want us to see is all those things. God, this would be so much easier if you would just help me understand. There's the negotiation. I'm willing to understand and appreciate and give you the praise you're due and join in on doing it if you would just help me understand. There's the negotiation. And sometimes God, because he loves us so much, says, all right, let me help you understand. And sometimes he says, you're never going to understand. It's not for you to understand. Just do it. Just obey me. Trust me. I mean, I told somebody the other day, this is how I'm describing my world right now. And again, I'm going to apologize, even though I know I don't have to. I'm going to apologize. There's so much about my illustrations and everything right now are about me, but this is just like raw. I feel like I'm back to when I first became a Christian again in some ways. But I feel like right now, throughout my life, every major that I remember as one on this journey coming to know God and being following him, every time God has done something really major in my life, it's always, Dale, here's where you're going to go. Here's where I'm sending you. Go. Okay? I mean, even coming up here, Dale, you're going to be the pastor up here. Drop your plans and go. Be. But this time he's saying, Dale, go, and I'm going to tell you later where you're going. And I was praying this morning. I said, God, I have no clue how to do that. You have not taught me that. And I feel him saying in my spirit, yep, you're right. Class is open. If he would just say, here's the decision I want you to make, now get on with it, that would be so much easier for me, I know how to do that. But all of a sudden he's saying, I just want you to go, and I'm gonna show you where it is. I don't know how. I don't know how. So, my negotiations right now, God, you know, if you would just show me, I would obey immediately. But he's saying, that's not what we're doing this time. I'm going to give you one decision you have to make. And until you have the courage to make that decision, everything else stays in the dark. And I'm like, what if I don't like that? And I have to come back and say, okay. It's not just that God always wins. This is a good thing. God's always winning is a good thing because of this. Because of who God is. If God were not who I know him to be, both from his word and through his Son and by his Spirit, if I were not absolutely confident that he is who he is, I would be afraid of him winning all the time. I would think sometimes I gotta win. But because I know who he is, and I know that he is wiser and better and has a better plan for me than I can ask or imagine, then I actually realize that this is good for me. And so I'm willing to stand in my dark room and cry out, I don't know what to do. I listen to him say, I know. And I'm not going to tell you. And it's going to be okay. And I have to stand there and say, take my fear and unbelief and nail them to the cross. And give me the courage just to be here in this moment. Without being full of fear, full of unbelief. And this morning I woke up mad. Then this picture, our bed is here, and the head of the bed's up here. There's a little aisle, her dresser is there, and I have her picture up there. I woke up, saw her picture like I've seen it now for months, and the first words out of my mouth were, you know, this is all your fault. You had just stayed, we wouldn't be in this mess. It's the first time I've actually felt angry in the last 5 months.
Love you too, is a stage.
But and it also is a stage. That passed relatively quickly. But I had to realize, you know what? Again, because God, Paul says, I've learned in whatever circumstance I find myself to be content. And I hear God saying, that's where we're going. Content. And I thought, and I think of myself, I think, the road to contentment leads through the cross. I think these are real things. I think these are not just stories. This is not just an Old Testament Bible story. I think this is God showing us what life is like when by faith we surrender and submit to his leadership. We're going to be on the backside of the desert sometimes. And he's going to show up. And when he shows up, he's going to make sure that we remember who's who. And then it's not about us, it's primarily about him, that he is going to win. Not only in this idea of subjugating our will, but of aligning our will with him so we are truly free in him. The number one reason Christians feel that they are abandoned, alone, betrayed by God is because they're trying to hold on to something that their greatest joy will come in releasing. And just trusting him.
For the purpose of making it hard for us. That's all just to draw us in closer. Is that, you know, like you're struggling, not even know which way to go, or what to do.
You know, Steve, honestly, I think if this were easier than it is, I wouldn't stand in the middle of my dark house and cry out and say, help me. I would keep going until I fell over the cliff in exhaustion.
It's just like relationship taking for granted, you know. You can't take your partner for granted and expect it to go somewhere. And so if we're taking God for granted, we're not asking him for help. I mean, that's kind of the way I look at it with me. It's like I've seen people come and go from, and I've been to several churches, and so I've seen people come and go, and they come when they're desperate and in time of need. But then things get better and they're fine, and then they don't come.
Did you ever, in the early days, did you ever have an issue with a snowmobile that you didn't know how to figure out? And you had to figure out a way to make something work? Would you have bothered to figure that out if the problem hadn't existed?
I had one I never did figure out.
Okay. But I mean, in the one that you fixed, the one that you figured out, and you figured out how to make something function that was non-functional, would you have invested the time in figuring out how to make it function if it hadn't gone non-functional? If it worked?
You would know you needed to.
You wouldn't know you needed it. And I think part of what happens here is God knowing what we need to experience in order to motivate us or put us in that place where we will cry out to him to know something we don't yet know in a way that we need to know it. I know that if God says go here, I'm going to get there. If God just says go and doesn't tell me where, I don't know where, I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't know anything. And now suddenly it can't be about me. And apparently I need to learn that. Apparently this is where I've been for a while, and God is saying, now I want you to learn a new way of trusting me. A way that you've talked about, but now you have to know.
Well, here we are. Another thought on that?
What?
Another thought on that? So, you're in the dark and you're crying out for help. Wouldn't you be disappointed if you could figure it out yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Then what would you have?
And a lot of times we want to think we figured it out for ourselves. It takes a while to realize now that's
Not even close.
I want you to say who I am. I do my sister.
Right. So this coming Sunday, we're going to do the last half of the chapter, I think, Lord willing, from verse 13 to the verse 22. We're going to talk about this word. Okay.
17:11:71.
Which in English is written like this. Which in the way we most often see it is written like this. Which in Greek is written like this. No, which in English is written like this. So Hebrew written as in English, Hebrew translated into English, English translated into Greek, and translated back English. And that's where we're going on Sunday. This is actually not written correctly. This should be written like this. Not that you all care, I understand. Yes. You go ahead. That's where we're headed on Sunday. The I am still is. Father, thank you for letting us have just a precious time together tonight in your presence, with your Spirit powerfully among us, bringing us your word, letting us have the opportunity to explore who you are a little more, knowing that the positive and successful outcomes of that exploration are entirely in your hands. They are for our benefit, but they are for your glory, and we gratefully surrender ourselves to you and ask you to do powerfully and mightily among us more than we can ask or imagine. So that as we are a stage for you to present truth about yourself to the world, we will be a stage that's adequate for the presentation you want to make. We ask in Jesus' name.